Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige Vanderbeck, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and truly modern witchcraft. Hello again, my witchy friends, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Fat Feminist Witch podcast. Today we're going to dive into a little bit of green witchcraft and talk about sacred trees and using tree material in your magic, like wood, resin, powders, flowers, you name it. This topic was actually requested on Instagram back in March. I had found a bunch of willow branches from a tree that my neighbors were trimming up, and I brought home huge bundles of it. It looked like I was carrying a whole tree down the street. Shared an image, and a user called The Sight and the Fury asked if I could do an episode about trees and wood, which I thought was an awesome idea. So thank you so much, and I really hope you like the episode and that it answers some of your questions. I am an absolute tree lover. I was that kind of kid who had favorite types of trees and favorite individual trees in the neighborhood and would stop and talk to them like we were friends. Uh, I had a park nearby that was filled with both black and white oak trees, also some maples because they're everywhere, but it's mainly an oak tree little forest. So I spent a lot of time in this wooded area, and it was absolutely my happy place. I actually live near that same park now, again as an adult. It's kind of funny. I also had, close friendship with a humongous cherry tree in our backyard that I was always climbing and snacking on, and then I blamed it on the squirrels and the birds and stuff. So sorry, little animal friends. And I also had these two big pine trees in the front yard that were so tall that they seemed to actually touch the sky. When I discovered witchcraft, it was immediately obvious to me that trees were an incredibly sacred part of the path of the witch. And like the term earth-based religion, it is something that told me that I had found a belief system that resonated with me in a very deep way. Uh, as a Canadian, trees are also a big symbol of our culture, right? And like almost every other continent in the world, the indigenous people here held many types of trees as sacred and also useful in everyday life and in medicine and in building. And they were the backbone of everything that life was, So I was fortunate to grow up hearing beautiful stories about the trees that grew here and the spirits that resided in them. Trees are alive, and not just in a technical way in that they grow. They're living, breathing, loving, and communicating creatures on this planet, just like anybody else. Harming trees unnecessarily and wasting their byproducts is a sacrilege. Deforestation is literally making our planet harder for everyone to live on. So trees are important. We really, really need trees, and we need to be kind to our trees. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the mythology and the religious and cultural significance of trees, including some specific trees from around the world. And then I'll talk about incorporating trees into your practice, both through interacting with the living ones and by using things like fallen wood and bark, resins, leaves, flowers, nuts, fruit, oil, whatever, to create your magical items. The belief that trees are sacred stretches back beyond recorded history. It's very old. Much like the sun and the moon, trees are some of the first beings that were regarded as divine. They connect the earth and the heavens, they host magical animals, they provide materials to build shelters and tools, they're sources of food and medicine. Of course, we know now that trees also allow us to breathe. We wouldn't be breathing without them. They take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and they create the oxygen that we breathe in. They clean and filter the air of the entire planet. Spiritually, trees are home for spirits, or even were the thing that was holding together the entire universe. The belief that trees are sacred stretches back beyond recorded history. So, a lot like the sun and the moon, trees are some of the first beings to be regarded as divine. They connect the earth and the heavens. They host magical animals. They provide materials to build, shelters and tools. They're sources of food and of medicine. Of course, we now know that trees also allow us to breathe. We wouldn't breathe without them. They take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out, and they create the oxygen that we need to breathe in. They clean and filter the air of the entire planet. Spiritually, trees were homes for spirits, or even were the thing that was holding together, the physical and spiritual worlds. They represented the cycles of life and death. In climates with 4 seasons, trees also serve as a natural clock. We know where we are in the year based on the colors of the leaves, the size of the buds, which trees are blooming. We can also predict some future weather based on how trees are blooming and are growing. We can tell whether the season will be wet or dry, whether crops will produce a lot or it will be a lean year. When you're choosing a place to live, especially in a time, before we had cities, an abundance of nearby trees was almost as important as a natural water source when you were deciding where to settle down. In part because a lot of trees are a source of fresh water in really dry places. So they sustain our material and our spiritual life and our connection to the planet. In history and mythology, many trees were considered sacred for different reasons in cultures all over the world. But in most of these, there is a story of the tree of life. Some tree of life stories specify a type of tree, like an apple tree, and some do not. For a fair few, we still don't know if it was a specific or even a real tree that existed, or if it was simply a concept, an idea. Many people associate the tree of knowledge of good and evil from the story of Adam and Eve with an apple tree. But the tree was never actually described. Like we were given no characteristics of the tree itself. But in Greek mythology, Hera's garden of Hesperides was home to a tree of golden apples that were protected by a dragon and were said to grant immortality. The tree of life was a little different in all other cultures. So some produced fruit that granted life or healing or immortality. In Norse mythology, the world tree Yggdrasil was an ash, and it was the center of the universe. And around it were the 9 different worlds, which included like the underworld, heaven, the earth. It's where gods congregated and, withstood trials, where the Norse version of the fates resided. And the dew that dropped from the tree was a magical water that could grant, psychic abilities or magical abilities. In ancient Mesopotamia, there was a sacred tree that's come to be the tree of life, which scholars think is the same as the plant of birth from the Epic of Gilgamesh. A specific type is not mentioned, but I'm looking at a lot of images that seem to depict it as a pomegranate tree. Gilgamesh also gives us a tree called the Hulupu tree, which grows in Inanna's garden and from which she plans to build a magical throne. But when she goes to harvest the wood, she finds a serpent coiled around the bottom, a zoo bird, which is it's like a divine bird of storms and the west winds, She finds the bird in its branches, and then a demon living in the trunk. And I can't pronounce the name of the demon. I apologize. So Gilgamesh kills the snake, which scares away the zoo bird and its little nest of babies. And then the demon, in her fear and her haste to escape, torches the tree and takes off. The demon in that story now is regarded to be the goddess Lilith, and she is still associated with birds and snakes and trees because of that story. A few sources list the Hulupu tree as a willow tree, though exactly what kind of willow, I'm not 100% sure. In Jain and Buddhist mythology, there is an incredible story, so beautiful, of the tree of life churning the ocean of milk, or the Milky Way. It churns the Milky Way, and from it emerges the divine cow that bestows all needs, all life, as well as the star Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky. This tree is actually associated with a lot of real trees. I found a whole list, but the spiritual description of it is gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. So it's said to have golden roots, a silver trunk, coral leaves, lapis lazuli branches, gemstone buds, and diamond fruit. God, do I love that. And a lot of the images I found, it's depicted like a plumeria or a magnolia. So it's just an absolutely gorgeous type of tree, right? So this tree of life is also called a wishing tree. And like I said, I found a list, and there are about 8 to 10 varieties, and they all grant different wishes, like food or drinks or silks and luxurious garments. One makes music. Another one produces divine light that helps to elevate the spirit. So some of the trees on the list that I found are the sacred fig, the coconut tree, and some other varieties of palm, the banyan, and the mulberry. So it's a big it's a big collection of trees. In China, there's a tree of life carving that features a phoenix and a dragon on either side of a peach tree. And this tree produces fruit every 3,000 years that can grant immortality. Now, the phoenix in this image is not the bird born from fire that you guys might recognize. The bird is more of a feminine counterpart to the dragon. Its body represents the celestial bodies, and together with the dragon, it's a symbol of everlasting life. The tree being a peach is super fun to me. It reminded me of one of my favorite folk tales of all time, which is actually from Japan, not China, but a lot of plants share a lot of associations since the two cultures are so close. So Momotaro from Japan is a story about a magical little boy who was born from the pit of a gigantic peach that a kind but poor and childless couple find floating down the river. So this little boy who leapt out of the peach pit when his parents went to go cut it open. He was super strong. He grew up fast. He spoke immediately after birth and was a great hero who defeated a gang of demons with the help of a talking dog and monkey and pheasant, whom he befriended by sharing dumplings. In some early stories, he didn't actually emerge directly from the peach, but was born to a woman who had eaten a magical peach and grew young again. So I love the idea of a peach being a fruit of life and immortality. And it makes the fact that we associate it with sex now to be just a little bit more interesting. Kind of matches up, doesn't it? In many parts of Africa, especially around the savannah, the tree of life is the baobab tree. This tree is a really, really beautiful, really wild looking tree with branches stretching out flat like roots. One story is that the tree was tossed to earth from the heavens and oops, got planted upside down and got stuck like that. And this tree is absolutely massive. They can live for thousands of years. They store fresh water in their trunks, and its fruit, leaves, and seeds are all eaten and are a really awesome source of vitamin C. So they very literally sustain life in this very dry climate. In a few different indigenous tribes here in North America, the continent is called Turtle Island, and is an island that exists on the back of a great turtle who is swimming through an endless sea. Every tribe has a different collection of stories or a different idea about how we all got here on the turtle. But one that I really like is that a pregnant woman who lived in a land inhabited by the first humans, which was anchored by the tree of life, slipped and fell into the endless sea, and she was rescued by this great turtle. She couldn't get back home, so she began the world here by planting the tree's bark and, of course, raising her new family. In ancient Mesoamerica, the world tree was a ceiba tree that reached in all 4 directions and was a host to birds who were the spirits of ancestors and elders. And like the tree of life or the wishing tree from Jainism and Buddhism, it was used to either represent the Milky Way or the Milky Way. The stars of the Milky Way were the foliage of the tree. And I have to say, I honestly did not know how old the concept or the name of the galaxy being called the Milky Way actually was. For some reason, I thought this was kind of a newer thing, but it's all over. And like in ancient Egypt, it was thought to be cow's milk. In Greece, it was Hera's spilled breast milk. Very, very cool. If life can be granted and represented by trees, so can death. And there are plenty of trees associated with death and the underworld. Interestingly, many of our trees of life are also trees of death, which makes sense because they're 2 sides of the same coin, right? In Greek mythology, the pomegranate is the food of the underworld, but in other parts of the Mediterranean, the trees of life are depicted as pomegranates. Apples are a tree of the underworld. Yew and cypress, both of which commonly grow or are planted in cemeteries, both can represent longevity and rebirth as well as death. In some myths, the actual entrance to the underworld is located beneath a giant cypress tree. Yew is a little more practical in this association as it's incredibly poisonous. In Celtic mythology, elm trees were associated with the underworld and with elves that facilitated the transition from one to the other. In ancient Egypt, the acacia tree housed both the life and the death of the soul. So it was used in funeral rites and in the construction of coffins. Fun fact, this is also the tree from which ayahuasca is made. Ayahuasca doesn't kill you. It's a spiritual psychoactive brew. But it is interesting that this tree that is used to go on a spiritual quest, to take you out of your body in some way, was associated with the underworld and the transition from life to death in another place. The hawthorn tree has a pretty similar energy to the death card in the tarot, which is not necessarily literal death, but transformation or moving into another life. The Celts called it the fairy tree, and we all know, or you should from listening to me because I drone on about it, that fairies are just like nature itself. They're beautiful and potentially incredibly dangerous. So aside from Beltane in the month of May, of course, which is coming up, hawthorns could not be cut down or brought into the home as they'd bring misfortune and invite the wrath of the fairies into your life, and you don't want that. In the Arthurian legends, Nimue, or Vivienne, the Lady of the Lake, was not always a benevolent figure and also definitely left the lake. But in typical fairy fashion, she was very beautiful and she caught the eye of everyone, but no one really could tell if they trusted her or not, which was a good call. So she caught the eye of Merlin, the magician. In time, he fell for her, but she refused to give him her love until he taught her all of his magical knowledge. She got some of it out of him too, but when he realized how dangerous this could be, he fled. Nimue followed. Eventually, she got every single spell out of him. The very last one being how to imprison a man forever in a tree. And of course, she immediately did that. And Merlin was transformed into and then trapped inside a hawthorn tree, seemingly forever. Merlin was part mortal, so I'm not actually sure if he actually could die. I mean, he could still be in that tree cursing the mistake of thinking with his dick. So, sorry, buddy. That sucks. Should have thought that through a little bit better, I think. The cacao tree, which gives us the greatest gift known to man, which is chocolate. It's my favorite thing in the world. Also has an underworld connection. Cacao is native to Central and South America, and the indigenous cultures of Mexico considered it to be a gift from the gods. It was also associated with death and was consumed by warriors before battle, at weddings, funerals, and religious ceremonies, and all other celebrations of the cycle of life of both people and land. So chocolate was considered sacred to the creation god, who presided over crafters and merchants, knowledge, learning, and most of the religion, as the patron of the priesthood. One of the great myths about the creation god, whose name I absolutely cannot pronounce. I have tried and it sounds awful, so I deeply apologize. So after 4 iterations of mankind were wiped out by fires and a great flood, which is a story we all know and love, right? The creation god descended into Mictlan, the underworld, and mixed the bones of the previous people with his own blood to create the 5th and successful iteration of humanity. That's us. He gifted the people with a cacao tree and taught the women how to ferment it and mix it into a drink, combining it with chilies, vanilla, allspice, and honey for more flavors and different spiritual attributes. So depending on what you're doing, you would drink chocolate in a different way. Those warriors who were going off to battle definitely combined it with chilies for extra fire and energy and vitality. Now, I just have to say, I am so grateful. So grateful for the creation of chocolate. And I'm so grateful that all of our previous iterations died out horribly and that their corpses could be reconstituted with god blood so that I have something delicious to binge eat while menstruating. That's definitely added a whole lot to my life. I need it to live. Now, before we continue, I would like to take a little break here and take a moment to say a special thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. I'm so honored to have so many people who support me, and I don't just mean financially. Every single time I've struggled, and anytime I have something to celebrate, they are there to cheer me up or cheer me on and offer me feedback. It's really lovely. They're wonderful people, and I wish I could thank them all here. But let's just go with 3 so that this episode isn't 100 hours long. So today I'm shouting out to 3 of my earliest patrons, which are Jenny, Kay, and Barbara. They have been so kind and lovely, and they're very active members of the group, so it's always a treat to get a chance to connect with them. So thank you. Okay, let's get back to some wild and witchy trees. Because witchcraft, enchantment, and spell casting certainly have their own list of sacred trees. And this list could go on and on and on, but I would love to talk about a few with you. The first is willow, which is like the official tree of the full moon. It's ruled by the moon and the element of water, and is used by witches for every magical purpose from healing to spiritual development, worshipping the goddess, and communicating with the dead. So a wide variety of uses. It's a common wood used in the creation of magical brooms, both the larger branches for the staff and the thin, wispy ones for bristles and for cord. One of the large willow branches that I grabbed back in March is definitely going to be used to make a broom. Ash is another wood used for brooms, and I mean this in the least reductive way possible. Ash is a wood associated more with gods and with masculine energy, and I want something that's more associated with women's power. Willow was the tree in Inanna's garden where Lilith was found. And as you might have heard in my previous episode with Gabriella Herstick, that makes it a good tree for connecting with dark goddesses and with that underworld journey of initiation that many of them had to go through. Willow is one of those trees I always see as an overwhelmingly positive and peaceful symbol. But if its wood can also house demons, and it can grow so well in places of the dead because it grows in most cemeteries around here, I think that means that willow is maybe not as soft as some may think. Next is one of my personal favorites, which is currently blooming, and that is the magnolia tree. This tree is so ancient that it existed before bees, had to be pollinated by beetles. So it is a tree of ancient wisdom and past lives, personal power, beauty, and magnetism. There are a lot of varieties of magnolia. But here in North America, 2 major types. So the first is the one that grows where I am, and it gets these nice big wide pink flowers. Some folks call it a tulip tree, but that's definitely something different. Then you have the famous southern magnolias, which grow from, Virginia down into Florida and a little bit into Texas. They smell quite different, with southern ones having there's almost like a little bit of a lemony scent to it, and the flowers look much different. They're not quite as wide and floppy and open as the pink ones that I get. They're a little bit more, what is the word I'm looking for? They're a little bit more sculpted, these flowers. Also just absolutely incredibly beautiful. So magnolias are blooming right now. And the ones here, it's really interesting. The flowers come first and the leaves come in later. So you have this huge tree with no green leaves, and it's just exploding with pink flowers that you can smell all the way down the block. It's a very heady and very floral smell. The southern magnolia is a big part of the culture down there. It represents charm and elegance and hospitality. It's also got an important place in hoodoo and is considered a magical plant for women's success and well-being. The dried leaves are one of the most commonly used parts and are included in spells for fidelity, to keep lovers from cheating or to protect lovers from spells by other women who want to pull them away. As I have recently learned, my magnolias are also edible. The flowers apparently have a spicy ginger flavor and can be used to make, honey or cookies or pretty much anything. The Black Forager, Alexis Nicole, she posted a video and a recipe for making cookies. Absolutely lost my mind. I can't believe I had no idea that I could eat this flower that I'm so obsessed with. Unfortunately, it was a little too windy this year for me to gather any nice young flowers. Most of them blew away. But next year, it is my goal to make some infused honey or maybe some magnolia jam. Both varieties of magnolia are sacred to Venus and get us in touch with ancient feminine strength and magic. Another tree that's considered empowering for women is, naturally, the apple. I see it. It's been painted as this symbol of the degradation of a pure woman, right? That's the vibe we're supposed to take from it. But those stories sound a lot like women taking back their power in this day and age. So this is another tree of Venus, and its main use is in spells for love and lust and in divinations for the same. Lots of popular love divination games, like the ones you play at Halloween, center around the apple. The wood of the tree itself is really beautiful and is a traditional material for magic wands. Every part of the tree is also good for astral travel or entering other worlds like the underworld, the dream world, the world of magical beings. In the Arthurian legends, the isle where people like Merlin were born or went to learn magic is called Avalon, making it the Isle of Apples. This gives the wood the ability to breach barriers between worlds. Apples are also outrageously healthy, so healthy, full of vitamins and fiber. It cleans your teeth and eliminates bacteria in your mouth. My mom always used to say, if you forget your toothbrush when you're out of the house, eat yourself an apple. The fact that that's actually true, very exciting. It also helps with headaches. And the boiled flesh of apples, it can actually soothe burns, like sunburns, but also burns. So it makes apples really, really amazing for healing magic. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. The seeds of apples can also produce cyanide in your body, so don't eat those. But you can include them in rituals that deal with the dead and the underworld. Let's get away from North America for a little while. Let's go all the way to Australia. Australia as a continent is absolutely nuts, just so wild. It is so unique. It is so unique. There's no other place on the planet like Australia. The plants, the indigenous cultures, the animals, everything about it is very wild and special. And two trees from Australia that have become vital medicine, but something we're all familiar with all over the world, are the eucalyptus and the tea tree. Tea tree is actually endemic to Australia, meaning it doesn't live anywhere else. And eucalyptus is native to Australia in general, while some of the 700 varieties are endemic and they don't really grow anywhere else. But some others grow in neighboring regions like Tasmania and Indonesia, right? Actually, the oldest record of eucalyptus is a fossil found in South America, down at the very bottom of South America, Patagonia, which, a long time ago, theoretically, was connected to Australia. That's a tangent. I'm sorry. I just thought that was really neat. So to me, this makes both of these trees really powerful symbols of things like uniqueness and personal power, freedom, forging your own path, as well as forming connections with the rest of the planet, but in your own special way. Magical plants are almost always a little bit contradictory like that, aren't they? Life and death are the same tree. So freedom and individuality and connection, same tree. Both trees are used for medicine and have been for thousands of years. They are especially good for the respiratory system, clearing your head, and cleaning physical wounds. So eucalyptus is an insecticide and a deterrent for bugs. It also drains so much water from the soil that it disrupts mosquito populations and therefore slows the spread of malaria. So it's got some really, really cool protective qualities. Even if you're not trying to protect from mosquitoes, if you're trying to protect from someone who is draining the life out of you, eucalyptus can help. Tea tree is used in a lot of the same ways. It's antiseptic. It's used to treat coughs and colds and respiratory problems. It helps heal wounds. Indigenous Australians would crush the leaves. They would, just beat them until the oils were released, and they would inhale the vapor when they had trouble breathing. A lot like we do now with eucalyptus and tea tree and, any sort of steam. You put them into steam, you put them in the shower, you put them in a humidifier, and they help to clear out your sinuses. The leaves could also be made into tea, but please do not ever consume tea tree essential oil. Don't consume that. It will hurt you. A lot of people, I've seen so many people online in the last couple of weeks that I've been researching this that say that they eat or drink their tea tree oil. It is so, so bad for you. Don't do that. It will make you very sick. Anyways, eucalyptus was used in spiritual ceremonies. In a cleansing manner, it served a cleansing purpose. They would burn it and waft the smoke around people and places to clear away bad spirits and energy. Isn't it neat that all over the world, a concept like that exists on every continent where plants grow? There is some plant that you can burn and waft the smoke around to clear away spiritual energy. I just think that is so, so interesting. So both of these plants, eucalyptus and tea tree, are great for healing, spiritual cleansing, connecting to ancient cultures and ancient land, clearing the mind, and connecting to your own unique power. Eucalyptus wood is also what didgeridoos are traditionally made of. So sound healing and connecting to the divine through music can also benefit from eucalyptus, even if you don't have a didgeridoo. Even if the oil is all you've got, put some diluted oil on your throat or a musical instrument before a ritual. Fun fact I learned. I learned a lot of fun facts about Australia. Playing the didgeridoo has also been proven to reduce sleep apnea and snoring, which I think makes it good for sleep and dream magic. I don't know if I've said it enough, but Australia is really cool. Since we are already on that side of the planet, let's talk about the Japanese cherry tree, or the sakura. March and April are cherry blossom season in Japan. When the blossoms of these non-fruiting cherry trees begin to fall, they float through the air like delicate pink snow. They're so beautiful. And sitting beneath the tree is a really lovely and romantic activity. But the symbolism to take in here is impermanence. It's like memento mori, the ephemeral quality of life. Beauty grows, it blooms, and it fades just as quickly. But this isn't something to mourn because the cycle will begin again. Hanami is the art of flower viewing and is used mainly to describe these cherry blossom watching parties where folks contemplate the transient nature of flowers and beauty. Originally, plum blossoms were what people were watching. And apparently some older folks prefer to stick with the plums because cherry blossom season is incredibly busy and a bit loud. Boy, do I respect that. Flowers were also used as a divination tool to help gauge the success of that season's rice crops and to mark the beginning of the growing season. Offerings of sake were given to the kami, or the spirits that inhabited the sakura tree. And they're a very spiritual symbol. They often mark Shinto or Buddhist shrines and temples where offerings are made and prayers are spoken. The goddess of Mount Fuji and all volcanoes in Japan is also the cherry blossom princess, and a symbol of how delicate earthly life can be. Bet you didn't think those petals were quite so heavy. It's kind of a big deal. Uh, in modern witchcraft, cherry is sacred to Venus and can be used in love magic. It is a popular love and sex symbol here, isn't it? Which is both cute and gross. Can be used in cute ways or gross ways. The wood is great for wands and incense to call in love and lust. It's a very beautiful wood. I had a big tree in my backyard growing up, and it was just gorgeous. There's really no other tree quite like it. In Japan, if a cherry branch hits the ground, it's believed to connect to the underworld and our world. It links them together. And in China, it's used to banish and protect from evil spirits. So you get lots of different uses of the cherry blossom and the cherry wood. Now, it wouldn't be an episode about magical trees by a Canadian without mentioning maple trees. There are hundreds of maple varieties, but the sugar maple is the one we associate with Canada. And it's where maple syrup comes from, right? Actually, it's where maple sap comes from, which actually contains a lot of water, and it has to be cooked and boiled down until only the syrup remains. It takes buckets and buckets of the maple sap to actually get, just one little bottle of syrup. Recently, I've discovered that you can buy maple water, the like sap before it's syrup. Here, there's a brand, it's called Sapsucker, and it sells flavored maple water. So, like the carbonated flavored waters that you can get that always taste super gross. This one is maple water that's carbonated and flavored. It's naturally sweet because that's where the sugar is. And the flavors are also naturally derived, so it's actually really tasty. This isn't an ad. It's just, it's something I recently got to try, and I was really, really excited about it because I don't like flavored water, but I like the idea of flavored water, so that's real fun. Because of this natural sweetness, maple wood, sap, and leaves and seeds are really, really good for attraction magic. You can make a classic hoodoo-style honey jar with maple syrup to attract a lover, money, a new job, whatever it is that you want. The seeds grow in these pods, and we call them keys. They don't actually look like keys, they look like wings. And they grow in a pair that twirls like a helicopter when they drop down from the tree. They spin all over. And these maple keys are an awesome love magic talisman, as you have this pair, working in tandem to move on and create a new life together. I also like to use them as a little protective talisman when traveling, especially by air. Because real maple syrup can also be a bit pricey because you need to use so much sap to make it, depending on where you are. I find it to be a really good offering to ancestor spirits, deities, whomever, as long as they appreciate sweetness. Not all do. Next, we have a group of trees, a family of trees, or a few trees in the family that have all had a remarkably important effect on modern religion. And that is frankincense, myrrh, palo santo, and copal. All of these trees are in the same family. They're not the same tree. They're in the family. And that family stretches across different continents. And they all produce a resin that has been used as an incense in religious rites for thousands of years. Let's start with frankincense and myrrh, both native to North Africa and the Middle East. A lot of people know them from the story of the Nativity when the 3 wise men brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to mark the birth of Jesus, who is the King of Kings, right? And the reason for that is that those resins were just as valuable as gold in that time. In Egypt, frankincense was also used in cosmetics. So that beautiful, the Egyptian eyeliner look, a lot of that was made from ground up frankincense resin. And myrrh was used in mummification. Burning it in these ancient times was a little less about enjoying the smell, which is wild to me because it smells so beautiful, and more about serving as a religious offering or to carry prayers up to the gods. It's still burned in churches now, partly as a throwback, to the story of Jesus, but also for its ability to ward off evil spirits and asking for God's protection, asking to have his ear. Myrrh was also used to make holy anointing oil, and it was burned in temples, again, to form a connection with the divine. Both frankincense and myrrh are used in healing all over the world for increasing blood flow, killing bacteria, and easing physical pain. There's also been some research saying that frankincense, the smell of it, can help ease mental pain, i.e. depression. Both are associated with the element of fire, and myrrh takes it a step further with its association with the phoenix, and this one is the bird who gets reborn from fire and ashes over and over. It was said that either its nest or the egg that contained its past and its future self, I guess you could say, confusing, was made of myrrh. This made me think that maybe the burning and, the death and the birth of the phoenix when it explodes would release a huge cloud of this fragrant smoke that cleansed and cleared away anything that it didn't want to carry into its next life, which is a very, very cool image, and definitely something that you could use as a symbol in your magic. Copal is a resin from a different tree in the family that grows mainly in Mexico and Central America, and it has been used as a sacred incense since pre-Columbian times. It cleanses spaces and people, it chases away bad or malevolent spirits, and allows the living to connect with both the heavens and spirits of the dead. So it's burned a lot during the Day of the Dead and other important occasions where family is gathering. It's an incense that fills the home with a warm and a loving energy. It allows people to connect more deeply. The scent and the smoke carry prayers up to heaven, and it's burned in churches and other religious ceremonies to help the people be heard by God. Finally, we come to Palo Santo. Palo Santo grows from the Yucatan Peninsula down through Peru and Venezuela, and is a major spiritual tool in Peru and Ecuador. It's used a lot for spiritual cleansing as well as healing and bringing good luck. This one's different in that you don't usually burn a resin. Unlike the other trees in this family, you burn the wood itself because it's so packed full of oils. And some of that is because that's how the tree grows. And some of it is from the harvesting. Harvesting of Palo Santo wood is a very sacred task in Peru and is regulated by the government to prevent overdoing it, wiping out the tree. The tree's never cut. Fallen pieces are collected and then stored to allow the oils to really, really soak into the wood. So to use it, you can get shavings. Sometimes it's shaved down and made into cones. Or you get these nice sticks. They're like, the ones I get are usually like the size of a Jenga piece. And you light it at one end and you let it smolder until it's basically charcoal and it lets out this incredible smoke. It is probably some of the most intense spiritual incense that I've ever smelled. And because you're burning wood, it leaves this awesome, that campfire smell, leaves it all over you and your space. And I love that smell. Not everyone does, but I really, really do. When I worked in a witch store, I would burn it with the doors open because you get a lot of smoke from it and it is very strong. So I would burn it with the doors wide open and people would just walk in. They look like old cartoons. Their nose stuck out like they're floating, like they're floating on the smell, like it's a pie cooling on a windowsill, right? It has a profoundly positive effect on people. And probably because it's such a great cleanser of bad energy and spirits. In Ecuador, it's often used to either remove or block the evil eye. It can also be brewed into tea, and it's used to make barrels for aging whiskey, which I imagine is pretty delicious. Since Beltane is coming up, let's close up our little procession of trees with a couple of sacred Celtic trees that are often celebrated this time of year. First of all, Beltane is a festival celebrated on the 1st of May. And while it is definitely a modern pagan and Wiccan Sabbath, it is also an ancient festival that celebrated fertility and spring. In Rome, the 1st of May was a day to celebrate and pay homage to lairs, or each family's personal home spirits. Actually, in the last days of April, they also celebrate Floralia in honor of the goddess Flora. And that was a very debaucherous and fun time that mirrors a lot of, Beltane celebrations. Beltane is, in my opinion, one of the most fun of the pagan holidays, as the mood is very, it's wily and flirty and fun. It's a sexy holiday. It's always filled with music and bonfires, flour, food, and back in my day, a lot of liquor and or drugs. I would probably call it a bacchanal, depending on who was there and what you were doing. The flip side of this day on the calendar is Samhain, or Halloween, which means in the Southern Hemisphere, spooky season is just beginning. Happy Halloween, y'all. Happy Samhain. But this makes Beltane and Samhain sister times, when that veil between the worlds is thin. But instead of the worlds of the living and the dead, like we get in October, it's the veil between our world and the land of fairies and nature spirits. Personally, I'm way more afraid of fairies than ghosts. Because if you play me some good music and or offer me some sweet treats and flowers, I am absolutely yours. I would fall for that shit in a second. You would not catch me wandering into an abandoned asylum at the witching hour. Never going to be my problem. But a beautiful field of wildflowers or a grove of majestic trees at twilight, hell yeah, I'm destroyed. If any fairies hear this, no, you didn't. So Beltane is a fertility festival, but it's also a fire festival. And this is where ash wood comes in. It is highly flammable while also being sturdy and strong. Its roots go very deep and it grows very tall. It is said that it stretches straight from hell and up to heaven, which makes sense when you remember that the Norse tree of life is an ash tree. It's a wood associated with virility and male deities. Beltane fires aren't just filled with ash wood, however. Whatever wood is around works, of course, but traditionally other sacred Celtic trees like hazel, birch, oak, apple, and hawthorn might also end up in the fire. So the smoke from the Beltane fire had both cleansing and blessing properties, and once upon a time, animals like cattle and sheep, would be walked through the smoke in hopes of granting a fertile year. Yet again, another smoke cleansing ritual. People took a different route towards the same ends at Beltane and actually leapt over the bonfire. So some jumped to attract a sexual or romantic partner. Some couples would jump together to strengthen their bond. And jumping the fire can also bring general good luck in finances, fertility, pregnancy, any of your magical workings. Ash is a traditional material for staffs, wands, and brooms. In this capacity, it serves almost as an amplifier. Cleansing and clearing with an ash broom is extra effective. Spells cast with an ash wand for any magical purpose will be supercharged. Just having some in your home is a talisman of protection, justice, prosperity, and wisdom. Working with ash can also help you form a deeper connection with your spirituality, deities, or spirits. It acts as a conduit. Birch is one of my very favorite trees. I love that white bark. They used to grow a little more plentifully where I'm at, but not as much anymore. Luckily, Northern Ontario it's just birch forest as far as the eye can see. It's such a treat to go up there. So birch is technically more of a winter wood, and the traditional Yule log for the winter solstice is made of birch. But birch is a very beginner-friendly tree. It's friendly. It makes great wands, brooms, incense, and candle holders. I actually have awesome, they're birch logs with a space drilled into them to put in glass candle holders that hold tea lights or votives. And those stay on my altar pretty much all year round. Birch is a symbol of starting fresh, of innovation, creativity, and new beginnings. One of my favorite parts of the tree is the bark. It's white and it falls off in these curly little scrolls. I absolutely loved them as a kid. I like to write and to draw on them, and I just like to have them. I remember one time I couldn't find any on the ground, so I went to pull a loose one right off of the tree. My mom stopped me, and she told me that peeling bark off of a tree felt to the tree what I would feel like if someone peeled off my skin. It makes me laugh. It's such a horrifying image as a child. That's why I remember it so much. But I've never tried to do that since. So don't do that, right? Find the little scrolls on the ground that have naturally fallen from the tree. If you find them, they can be used like paper. You can write a little spell or a prayer onto it. You can keep it tucked away, or you can burn it to release your intention out into the universe. Birch trees also produce a really nice sap that's collected very, very early in the spring before the leaves sprout. It's sweet and it's clear and it's refreshing, like water. Traditionally, they would tap the tree trunks, but this actually really harms the tree. So that's falling out of favor. And what a lot of people do now is they cut the end of a very small branch and hang a bag there or put a bucket there to collect the water instead. It's very tasty, and it's also been used for healing for quite some time. It's full of vitamins and minerals, but a lot of the traditional uses were for the skin and the hair. Finally, we come to the oak tree, the mighty oak tree. Kind of a big deal in terms of trees, right? And when I say big deal, I mean they are big trees. They're not necessarily always, like the giant Californian redwoods big, but they are big. They're strong and they're super, super sturdy. They also take up a lot of space. The roots stretch just as deep down into the earth as the branches do into the sky. The image of an oak tree altogether, it's very symmetrical. The oak is a symbol of wisdom, longevity, vitality, and personal power. It's a strong wood that repels water. So it's been used to build shelters and boats and tools for as long as people have been using wood to make those things. Because of that, it is a symbol of protection and of ingenuity as well. You can definitely use oak wood for things like wands. But I'm a big fan of acorns. I don't use the wood as much as I use acorns. I carry them like a little good luck charm. I keep them on the altar and I collect them from magical places. Like I brought a whole bunch home from Salem, Massachusetts. I feel like they grant me a little bit of courage. That's the kind of idea I get from them. It's this image of standing strong and tall and refusing to yield my space. In mythology, oaks are almost always associated with gods of thunder, like Zeus and Thor. And they are a summer tree, and summer is when the thunderstorm season really gets going around here. I used to read in like older books about, traditional witchcraft, that you can keep oak branches or acorns on the windowsills to keep your home safe from lightning strikes. But the reason oak is so associated with lightning is because they're often one of the tallest trees around and have a high water content. So they get struck the most by lightning. They get hit. But they do often survive these strikes. And if you ever see an oak tree that has been split almost straight through and both sides continue to grow, it really is an amazing thing to see. It definitely feels very strong and sturdy. There are so many trees. There are so many trees, full stop. But there are so many trees that I didn't get to talk about today, like pine and cedar and juniper, all of which are awesome for protection, but I associate them more with winter. So I think that's why I left them out. Hazel and chestnut and walnut, all incredibly witchy and have long been associated with magic, and of course tasty snacks. We talked a little bit about cacao, but then there's shea and coconut palms. They produce butters and oils that are healing and warm and very sacred in the places where they grow. There's the dragon's blood tree that makes that awesome blood red resin that we use for incense. Smells wonderful. There are the yuccas in Joshua Tree National Park. Not to mention all the amazing fruit trees and bamboo and really big cacti, which I don't think are technically trees, but a bunch of giant saguaro cactus growing together in the desert looks like a very special kind of forest to me. There are trees of all varieties growing all around all or most of us, and they provide so much that help us grow and live and thrive. They really are one of the most amazing things about our planet. When it comes to working with trees in your magic, you can absolutely collect things like wood and seeds and leaves and bark, resins and saps, oils, wood pulp, paper, and bring them home to use them in your spells or your rituals and to make tools. But you can also connect with living trees and tree energy without anything more than some time and the desire to do so. Taking a walk in the woods, or as they say in Japan, forest bathing, is simply that. It's walking through a forest and allowing yourself to be fully immersed in the experience. So you turn off your phone, you take out your headphones, which is hard for me, but definitely do that. And you breathe in the smell of the forest. It's proven to lower your heart rate and your blood pressure. It makes most people feel calmer and more relaxed. Even looking at a tree out the window seems to have measurable effects on mood and focus, which is very, very wild to me. But walking in the woods definitely calms me down. At the same time, it makes me feel very curious and energized. I can't wait to, keep walking through. Maybe I'll see an owl sleeping in a tree. Maybe I'll come across some really interesting moss or flowers or other animals. It's a treat for my senses because it's such a calming environment that doesn't shut my brain off, right? It keeps it going. I also find that it helps me let go of some anger and come up with solutions to problems I'm having. I can't seem to stop thinking for 2 seconds, even when I would like to. But having a good think when I'm walking through the woods is a very helpful experience. You can connect with individual trees in meditation, either in the physical presence of the tree or through visualization. I don't know about y'all, but since I read about the tree churning the ocean of milk, I have often just closed my eyes and pictured a big, lush tree reaching into the stars, which are swirling around the branches like fireflies, while these crystal fruits and leaves make twinkling sounds in the breeze. It's become a nighttime image I describe to myself, as I don't really see pictures when I visualize. It's more like I'm telling myself a story. But it's a visualization that helps me drift off to sleep. It's very calming and relaxing while being very enchanting. When I first practiced magic with other people, they would begin with this grounding meditation where you would sit or stand. I prefer to stand. You close your eyes and you imagine roots growing from you, from your feet, but beneath you and anchoring you to the ground, while branches grow above you, connecting you with the heavens. You basically become that Norse world tree, connecting in either directions. Sometimes they would specify a type of tree that was relevant to the purpose of our circle or to the season when we were practicing. Even when I am inside, I can't get outside, I like to put on some sounds of nature like rustling leaves and singing birds when I'm meditating or when I'm doing some sort of magic, even if I've got music going. Actually, especially if I've got music going. I really like the combination because it makes me feel like I'm outside, like I'm free, like I have a lot of space. Now, if you want to connect with a tree right there in your immediate environment, go outside. Take some time to wander through a wooded area and find a tree that you love. So you can either stand facing the tree with your hands on its trunk, or you can sit beneath the tree with your back up against it. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. If the wind is blowing through the trees, see if you can breathe in tandem with it. Feel the roots beneath you, the trunk supporting you, and the branches shielding you from the outside world. Even if all you do in this moment is breathe, you are making a connection. You are exchanging the carbon dioxide that you breathe out for the oxygen coming from the tree. You can talk to the tree like you might a spirit or a deity or an ancestor. You can say it out loud or you can say it silently. Share something of yourself or ask the tree for wisdom. Ask it to take away any of that heaviness that is weighing on you, to hold it in its branches, or return it to the earth through the roots so that that energy can be repurposed. Listen to the birds or the bugs or the critters that call the tree home and connect with them as well. I find the sound of cicadas in the summer to be one of the most meditative sounds in the world. It's both loud and quiet, intense and slow, and it builds up before getting quiet again, just like breath. Maybe you don't have cicadas. Maybe you've got woodpeckers, songbirds, buzzing pollinators, squirrels, or maybe you can hear wolves or coyotes looking for shelter. Listen and allow yourself to feel a part of this magical ecosystem. An interesting thing about us is that it becomes a lot easier to open ourselves up if we feel held and shielded. So allow your tree, or all the trees around you, to become a powerful boundary that provides you the space you need to grow and to expand. This is the magic of all the trees around us. Thank you so much for joining me today, fellow tree huggers. I hope you all have a wonderful Beltane, whether you celebrate it or not, and you find that this warm, new, sunny season is full of new life and, maybe a little bit of that spicy fire. If you look in the description for this episode, I have a little list of books and of sources that you can use to learn more about sacred trees. One of them is my own. It's Green Witchcraft, and in it you'll find instructions for making a wooden wand, making a broom, making incense, and connecting with some of the trees we talked about today, as well as some of the ones I didn't get a chance to get to. I also used The Ancient Magic of Trees by Gregory Michael Brewer a lot in this research, and The Healing Tree by Stephanie Rose Bird, which is a new book that is all about trees and botanicals in traditional African religions. As I said, I will link all of them in the description. I highly recommend, all three of the books, but I highly recommend both books. They're super interesting, and they cover a wide range of trees and plants that will appeal to a lot of different people on a lot of different paths. So check that out and maybe learn something new about the trees that you walk by every single day. If you want to learn more about me or the show and buy copies of my books, you can also get recommendations for new witchy books and decks. You can check out the fatfeministwitch.ca. It's not .com, it's .ca. I'm in Canada. I could not do the show at all without the support of my generous friends and followers on Patreon. And if you want to pitch in and get some extra content like monthly magical updates and posts and spells and things, visit patreon.com/thefatfeministwitch. I also have some merchandise, tote bags, stickers, coffee cups, and of course t-shirts, which go up to size 5X on my TeePublic shop at teepublic.com/stores/thefatfeministwitch. And of course, the links are in the description to the episode. Finally, you can track me down on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, where I can get a little bit more personal. I can really interact with you guys. I can answer some questions. I can share a little bit about my daily life, like when I find a whole horde of willow branches. I love that. So check me out there, and I hope to see you all around and welcome you back to the next episode of the Fat Feminist Witch podcast.